We've been looking at sustainable agricultural approaches, and it's been found that while you can use these things by themselves, the best way is to use all of them together, and to look carefully at the particular conditions, soil and climatic conditions where you are, and adapt those sustainable practices and find a best practice for your particular, for the particular place where you are. And so here, this is an integrated approach for sustainable agriculture. And it's been the maximizing yields was initially the primary concern. And with those maximizing yields came a huge growth in productivity. But with that growth in productivity, it's been found, as we looked at all those problems that have with chemical residues and with damage to the environment. So nowadays, this increasing interest in sustainable agriculture has been to look at a way that maximizes yields without damaging the environment, and so that we do have this resource for future generations. So the aims of agriculture, of sustainable agriculture, are to meet the needs of the people for the food that they need, while making an efficient use of non-renewable resources. Another aim is to support the ecosystem while mimicking natural processes with farming techniques, and also to sustain the economic independence of farmers. Okay, sustainable versus organic. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion about that. Organic techniques use only materials derived from natural sources, and they're very clear about that. Sustainable uses some of those organic techniques, but they also use artificial manufactured materials if they have an overall beneficial impact for the farming system. And they can use insecticides or herbicides, but they limit their use. So maybe only specific seasons, or spring or summer, or when the bees aren't pollinating, so as not to cause particular damage to those beneficial predators. They make sure there's no persistent chemicals. So that's saying not no chemicals at all, but none that leave a residue on the plant that could be eaten by humans or other predators. And also when there's absolutely no other way of doing it, then they would use insecticides or herbicides. So all of these are a bit airy-fairy, some of them. They're no better cost effective. And so what's acceptable to one person is not always acceptable to another person. So it's more about individual farmers striving to be organic, striving to be sustainable, rather than getting a certification of sustainability. Okay, sustainable approach to fertilizer application. Now, we've been saying how wonderful organic manures are, so compost is, and so that's the main sustainable idea, to use natural bulky organic fertilizers such as animal manures and composted crop remains because of the beneficial effects. And those beneficial effects are they tend to release the nutrients slowly, so to reduce risk of eutrophication. I hope you all remember what eutrophication is. Remember, that's algae blooming and then the bacteria eating the algae in the rivers, and then the big bacteria taking up the oxygen and causing fish to die. They are often a waste product. So if you've got a mixed farm and you've got cattle and as well as crops, then it makes sense because you've got that right there and you don't then have to dispose of it. You just dispose of it on your field. And this minimizes then transport costs. You don't need extra energy to make them. You've already got the cattle, and they improve the soil structure and are beneficial for the soil organisms. Grazing. If you are a pastoral farmer, then you will need to find sustainable methods towards your grazing so you don't overgraze the area. Remember, overgrazing is one of the biggest causes of land degradation, of soil erosion. So here you look at the stocking density. How many animals have you got in a particular area? And also you rotate the grazing. You don't just graze on one area, one large camp. You may break it up into smaller camps so you can rotate the grazing. You can put the animals in one area while the others get a chance to regrow. Then you move on at fixed times. So you leave the animals on an area for an appropriate time till the grass has been grazed down, and then you will leave it while you graze the other areas so it gets a chance to regenerate. So this way you would prevent overgrazing. You only graze it till you leave some of the leaves there so that they can continue to photosynthesize. You ensure sufficient grazing. If you leave an area for a long time, then and also if you graze down so there's very little grass, then bushes start to come there, and those bushes end up reducing the amount of grazing land you've got. And so if there are young bushes coming and you are moving around and eating in all the different camps, then they don't get a chance to grow continuously and to take hold because they'll be eaten as young seedlings. And moving the animals to each camp then fertilizes that camp, and then it's left for a while, and that fertilizer composts or the manure composts and improves the quality of the grass in there. It acts like fertilizer. And by not keeping them all in one camp continuously, you're preventing soil compaction, which would impact the structure of the soil and reduce the drainage ability of the soil. So you're preventing compaction by moving them through the different camps. Okay, crop rotation is a very sustainable approach. Remember all we learnt about crop rotation. There's less risk of pests and disease because the crop not grown in the same crop isn't grown in the same place as the previous year, because you're moving it through the different camps. You need to plough less because you would grow plants that need deep cultivation after root vegetables, so you don't need to send a plough through again. You need to fertilize less because you would maybe grow an organic, you'd grow a nitrogen fixing legume or something, or even clover or something before the crop that needs nitrogen. And you'd grow a range of crops, so you wouldn't rely on one particular crop that might have a failure in the market. If there's an oversupply of it in the market, you're also spreading your risk of crop failure. If one crop has a disease, then maybe the other ones will still be all right and you can get some money from them. Also, if the farmer relies on his food, you will have a wider diet for the farmer. And you can have, if grazing the crop is part of the rotation, then and if legumes, if clover also is part of the rotation, you'll get natural fertilizer for the soil. So lots of benefits there for crop rotation, and definitely part of a sustainable agricultural approach. Okay, the choice of crops. Now remember, sometimes this is a bit controversial because of the genetically modified story, but that's only part of it. Remember, we've been looking at sustainable plant breeding since the earliest times. For tens of thousands of years, we've been looking at selecting for the parent material. So as far as the benefits go of plant breeding, there are huge advancements in the quality of the crops that are grown for food. So reduced pest use, because one's always selected the parents for pest resistance and disease resistance as well. Reduced need for drought and need for irrigation because you've selected for drought resistant plants. shorter cropping cycles. If you've selected ones that quickly bring fruit, then your cropping cycles, you can maybe have 2 in a year so that you get 2 crops a year. Or if you want a longer season, then you can extend the harvest season if you've selected for a longer harvest season. And then also, if you want something that lets you not use so much herbicide, then you could use those genetically modified varieties. So don't just throw all the plant breeding away because of genetic modification. Irrigation practices. What are the best practices for irrigation? With farming being one of the biggest users of water in the world, and water being such a scarce resource, agriculture has to be very careful about how it uses water. So the main thing is about reducing water usage and targeting the use of water, so targeted use of water. So trickle drip irrigation, remember that's where you supply drips just to where the base of the plant. The water's going exactly where it's needed. And it also, you're able to water when the plant needs, not just have to water, okay, we'll water at this time of the day every day. You can say, oh, the plant needs now, I'm going to give them water. So that reduces the water wastage. It can be automated, a probe to see if do the plants need water now? Okay, I'll water them now. So this reduces labor. Nobody has to go around and say, oh, the plants need water now. It can be an automated thing, which would reduce labor. And remember, salinization is what happens when you overwater and the minerals in the ground dissolve and come to the surface and leave it all salty on the surface. You aren't overwatering, so there will be less salinization. Also, with this method, you're less likely to have runoff down into the rivers, so you're reducing soil erosion, you're reducing the eutrophication in the river as well. Also, this sustainable irrigation practices are to use alternative water supplies, like collecting rainwater off buildings and roads, and field runoff can be collected and reused. So to use other water where possible. Okay, towards a sustainable future. As we said, agriculture is the largest land user and major employer. So it's incumbent on agriculture to ensure a healthy and viable ecosystem. And it's also under pressure to feed this growing population in a sustainable way. They need to, agricultural farmers and environmental scientists need to understand and balance the competing factors. So how to maximize the nutrient availability in the soil. So especially working with the soils and managing soils with different characteristics so that they can produce maximally on those soils. And improving yields, but still taking the local people and the ecosystem into consideration, and looking at the agricultural practices and what impact they have on soil erosion and how to reduce this. Okay, please, that's the end of this chapter. Please can you do the end of chapter questions and the case study? We start with the end of chapter questions. Thank you.